Hello. I was just sitting here thinking about children that are boy crazy or girl crazy um, at an early age. Um, School age children that really fixate on the opposite sex or the same sex, but just that romantic fixation of wanting the love and the approval of another child at a young age. I was just thinking about that because I was like that when I was little. I was very boy crazy. And as I grew up, I always fixated on boys and then, teenagers and then men, and have finally, broken that part of myself apart and understand it so it doesn't play out in my life. And it's not like I've had to forego relationships. I actually am able to have a relationship because I'm not acting out what the root cause of that fixation, infatuation, and whatnot on men that I've had. So I was just thinking about other people and clients and relatives and just all the people that I know that have struggled in one way or another with codependence and staying connected to relationships that aren't ultimately, helping you grow and feel a more solid sense of yourself. It's like instead they're relationships that leave you unsure, uncertain, whether it's, their aloof behavior or an addiction or infidelity or whatever the thing is that keeps you from really connecting in a relationship and building trust and feeling safe. And I mean, that's what relationships are supposed to be about, but so many aren't. And it comes from codependency. And basically when I say the word codependency, I mean it in, if you don't have a solid sense of yourself and you look to another person, their approval or disapproval or them behaving a certain way or not behaving a certain way in order for you to feel okay, which leads to trying to control them, or it leads to like a wounded sense of self where you feel rejected and you collapse inside of yourself when that love source that you have become dependent on is not there. And I think the thing with codependency that you also have to keep in mind is that it takes both partners. It's a relationship that goes on and on and on, or a drama that plays out until one or both of you stop being codependent, in which case either one person stops being codependent and they say, you know what, I'm tired of playing this out, I'm going to just figure myself out and how to love myself, and I'm going to stop engaging. Then that may wake the other person up to begin changing. It rarely does in my experience, but sometimes people are ready to change, and it just takes their partner saying, you know what, I'm not going to play out codependent drama with you. Let's heal. That can happen. But more often than not, it becomes a matter of just having to let go and move on and find yourself. If that doesn't happen, then people just sort of play it out, and they continue to play it out. And so if one partner changes and stops being codependent, or if a codependent person is attracted to a non-codependent person, that relationship does not go very far, because a non-codependent person isn't going to enable the codependency in another person, and they will either be loving and challenge that person to grow, or they'll just end the relationship and walk away because they can sense, even if they don't think, oh, that's codependency, they can sense an emptiness in the codependent person, and they don't want to be a part of that. To be around people who are empty inside is very draining, And a lot of people are good at acting like they're not empty inside, and so you may be able to be around an empty person for a while, especially if you have this dynamic in your family and you're used to that kind of relating, which is kind of surfacey because there's not a lot of self, there's not a lot of soul present in the individuals. It's being suppressed under a lot of coping. That can only last so long. You know, some people it may be a couple months, and then you discover you see the emptiness, and emptiness gets acted out in all kinds of ways, from very sad and tragic to very vindictive and hostile. So it comes out, and people have a responsibility to heal themselves and not continue to play out dysfunction and just wounding, damaging, emotionally invalidating ways of being, or seeking the love of people who don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable or real, and don't have a desire to be. So yeah, so that's the thing. Like, if it takes two codependents to have a codependent relationship is basically what I'm saying. So one way, if you find yourself, you know, for myself, I feel like I learned about codependency in my 20s, early 20s, and I'm so glad that I did, because it kept me from getting too far in to the psychological and physiological, in terms of like attraction and physical attraction to another person. It kept me from buying into that too much for too long, you know? Like, so if I was in a dysfunctional relationship, I would figure it out, you know, pretty quickly. But I would still be in so much pain, and I was so suffering. And so, you know, it helped me, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to let go of the love focus. I stayed love focused. If I could find a relationship, I would be happy. If I could keep this relationship, I will be happy. And it just eventually, especially if you have the tools, which is what I'm trying to communicate right now, to recognize that it is a psychological dynamic that's taking place in you because certain needs went unmet from your childhood. And so you're not pathetic, you're not, you know, weak, you're not a loser, you're not needy, you know, all of these sort of the terms that almost have a derogatory quality to them. You're not those things. That's not who you are. You know, it's your pain body, as Eckhart Tolle says. It's your ego. It is the collective experiences of that which has happened to you that have been hurtful. Because most people who have parents in their life who know how to nurture and know how to set boundaries, which is what is required in order to avoid codependent relationships, to know how to nurture another person and be nurtured, and to know how to set boundaries and allow people to set boundaries with you. I mean, that's so key to having a mutually beneficial relationship. If any of you all are not able to do that and refuse to do that, the relationship will disintegrate unless you cling. And it's the clinging that keeps people, you know, stuck and suffering. And that stuckness and that suffering is because, you know, when you're stuck, it's saying, wake up. There's a reason. There's a reason. You're not meant to be stuck like this. So pay attention, you know, or you can consider, you know, you can continue to play out the victim and the, you know, bad guy or whatever dynamic that gets played out in relationships. Or you can take responsibility for your part of it and speak your truth. Figure out what your truth is, and figure out, most importantly, what is this thing from your past? What did your mother not give you? What did your father not give you? What did they not give each other? What happened what was going on in your parents' world while you were growing up? Was there, a divorce? Was there drugs and alcohol? Were they suppressed? Did they not say I love you? Did they not, communicate, positive things to you? Did they never criticize you? Did they never discipline you? All of these different things that parents have to, good parenting broken down requires the ability to give nurturance, which is self-esteem, positive mirroring, letting, nurturing something is not the same as molding something. A child is something that is growing organically, and so you can't control a flower to grow, but you can water it, you can give it sunlight. Same with a child. Growing up, helping your child to grow up, to nurture their growth. And a parent needs to be able to receive the child's love, because children are naturally very loving. It is our natural state to be joyful and loving. That is part of us. So they want to give love. Well, the love, not all parents know how to receive their children's love. If they haven't worked on themselves, they project, they have a clearly defined understanding for themselves of what their children should be like. So, or how they should express themselves, or what is okay. And so they give their children subtle clues about it's not okay to be spontaneous and loving. And so, just these sorts of things. Now, in terms of like discipline and boundaries, a parent is able to tell their child no if something that they're going to do is going to hurt them or hurt another person. They will not feel guilty, and they will understand that a child is going to test limits. If you can't accept that, just like a flower that's sort of like a vine is going to grow where it can. It's the nature of life to do that. And so setting limits can't be a scornful thing. It has to be from a place of love and respect for the child. Yeah. And so if people cannot do that for their children, and if you grew up in a home where you did not learn those things and see those things, but had almost like the opposite of those things happen, then you may grow up to not know how to do that for yourself or with others, which will make relationships very difficult for you, which may set you up for, more experiences of rejection, which then makes you believe, oh, I'm no good, and it's like it's a little vicious cycle that happens a lot with people. Also, if you experienced, very specifically like abandonment or rejection in your family and that sort of thing, that can be huge. And that can happen in so many different ways that don't look like traditional forms of abandonment or rejection. Like, a traditional form of abandonment or rejection would be saying, I don't like you, you're too fat. Or saying, I just got to get out of this marriage, it has to end, it's over. And then just bam, the relationship is over. And you have no power or control over it. In parent-child dynamics, it can be a father that is, anywhere from, there's the father who just isn't around. He's just not in his children's life. It's huge. sense of abandonment. But there's also fathers that work a lot or are on the computer all the time and they don't pay attention to their children, or they play video games all the time, or they, hang out with their buddies all the time, or whatever. When there's any distraction, whether it's something mild or if it's an addiction like alcoholism or drug addiction, anything that takes the parent's attention away from the child, to a level that's out of balance, that can be a form of abandonment and rejection to a child, because a child doesn't understand. The child just feels lonely. The child feels unmet. That's why I think there's so many people who are wounded and are afraid to talk to their parents about it, because the parents are like, we did the best we could. And it's like, well, yeah, because you didn't know. You didn't know what a child actually needed when you had one, because your parents didn't know what a child actually needed and didn't give it to you, and so how can you know this? So in order to heal codependency, I really encourage people to begin looking within. There's just start with committing to a life of introspection. After a while, that doesn't sound so scary, because a life of introspection does not mean, hiding out in a cave or being on a mountaintop. Solitude helps, quiet helps, but we're meant to be balanced. We're meant to have love, and we are meant to have space around us and aloneness, and to feel comfortable no matter what. And most people feel comfortable one way or the other. And if you are comfortable being in a relationship, you're probably going to experience some aloneness at this time. If you are comfortable being alone, then you're probably going to spend some, together time, and find yourself compelled to be in a relationship to deal with those fears. Because it's about balance. And that's, the tragic part of so many codependent relationships that I hear people talk about is that from a spiritual level, I can see these souls coming together to become conscious of this thing that has hurt them. Their parent, their childhood, or their relationship with their parents, or their culture, or whatever. And they're coming together to act this thing out and have this opportunity to heal it. But they're not getting good advice. There's not very good advice about relationships out there that people know about. It's out there, I've read it, and it works. But people don't get that. In the mainstream culture, they get fucking pop songs that are all about, you complete me, and you're the one, and you're this. And I used to love that shit too. I used to eat it up. But it would reinforce the dream, the longing, the nostalgia. Well, that dream and that longing and that nostalgia is that inner child part of you that was longing and needing and yearning for comfort from connection with your mother and your father. And some therapists and other people, I don't know, it seems like this critical, snide thing that people say is like, oh, well, he's just longing for the womb, or you're just longing for the womb. And yeah, let's make the world a little more womb-like. I think that would be a good thing, because we are so far away from the womb. We've sucker punched the womb the way the world is right now, at least the way this country is. We've punched mom in the gut, and that womb is hurting right now. So returning to the womb, or a womb-like state where we are more peaceful, where we are able to experience. Actually, okay, this is something, it's like we reject our childhood on so many levels. So many levels. And we have to stop doing that. I don't know if it was just like jealous adults who one day decided, it's probably wounded adults who had bad childhoods. It's so, at one point, people thought of children as like animals. People thought of black people as animals. There is a real tragic woundedness, a lack of empathy that has taken place on this planet that has to be balanced out. And so, yeah, we need to look at and allow for the world and ourselves to meet the needs that went unmet in our childhood. Through, first and foremost, within yourself, to get in touch with what was unmet, what needs to be met. And then begin working with that little kernel of insight and awareness about yourself. And ask yourself, well, how can I meet that need? And sometimes you may have friends in your life, or a lover, or whatever, that can help you meet that need. If you find you have people in your life that you can't go to with that need, they are not the right people to be in your life. They're really not. But you'll never know unless you try. You can assess the situation and be honest with yourself and see things as they are and begin to free yourself. Because what we do a lot of times is we attract people to us who treated us like who treated us like we were treated when we were young. And so we can't even allow in that it could be different, but it can. You're just around the wrong people. But you're not going to want to be around different people until you deal with yourself. So you have to start with yourself and inner awareness, inner insight, and just begin creating that for yourself. Go through, John Bradshaw has a book called Homecoming, Reclaiming and Championing the Inner Child. That is something I recommend. And I think I'm going to do some more videos about that, the inner child. So I'll just leave that for now, and let that gestate in my creative womb and see what comes out. And in the meantime, I really want to encourage anybody who watches our videos and kind of understands what's going on in opening and awakening and that kind of thing. Just start looking at the unmet needs. And I wish you lots of courage and empowerment to know that you deserve to begin and look at and meet those needs 100%. Now is the time. So, thank you.
Let's cut out the melodrama so we can wake up the whole wide world. Let's make up and start all over and awaken the boys and the girls.